Welcome, dear listeners. Where are you tuning in from tonight? And how has your day been treating you? Settle in. Take a warm breath. If you haven't already, do subscribe and stay close to our little cozy circle, because tonight we're traveling to Ashbury Cross, a quiet village where the old bell tower has slept for 22 silent years. Until this morning, a single toll rang out, soft, strange, and never meant to be heard. Miss Marple lifted her teacup slowly. Morning felt quiet. Too quiet. She sat by the small window of her cottage, watching the fog nudge against the glass. Street Mary Mead had known silent mornings before, but today felt different. Too still, too expectant. She sipped her tea with practiced calm. Warm, steady, reassuring. The sort of tea one trusted when the world behaved itself. Up the lane stood the old bell tower of Ashbury Cross, a structure ignored by time, unused, unchanged, unwanted. It had not chimed for 22 years. Its door was locked, its rope removed, its mechanism sealed. Miss Marple liked it that way. Silent things stayed honest. They did not invite disturbance. They did not stir memories. They did not summon trouble. She folded her hands. She planned her quiet morning. A gentle walk, a visit to the bakery, a glance at Mrs. Simmons' garden. Nothing unusual, nothing heavy. The fog thinned just enough to reveal the outline of the tower. Miss Marple leaned forward. Something moved near the door. A shape. Small, still, watching. She blinked. The shape vanished. Fog swallowed it whole. A trick of the light, she murmured. But she did not believe it. Her tea cooled. She reached for it again. Routine settled back into place. Then the clock on her wall clicked toward 6:03. A small click. A soft warning. And the bell tolled. One single strike. Deep. Heavy. Impossible. Miss Marple froze. Her cup hovered mid-air. Her breath paused. The sound rolled through the fog like a question no one dared ask. The tower could not ring. Everyone knew this. Everyone trusted it. Yet the toll had come. Deliberate, measured, announcing itself. Miss Marple rose from her chair. Confusion tugged at her. Not fear, not yet, but something close. Something old. Something she had learned to trust. She stepped outside. Fog hugged the lane. Cold, thick, quiet. The tower stood ahead, silent again, pretending innocence. She listened carefully. No footsteps, no voices, no movement, nothing. She glanced at her watch. 6:03. Exactly. Someone had chosen this moment. Someone wanted it marked. She turned back toward her cottage. A figure stood at the far end of the lane, still, unmoving, watching. Miss Marple narrowed her eyes. The figure slipped behind the hedge without a sound. She stepped forward, cautious, alert. Nothing stirred. No trace remained. Fog reclaimed the lane, and the toll lingered in her. Thoughts. Someone made that bell ring, she whispered, but no one has the key. The tower answered with a faint click. Metal, soft, recent. Miss Marple stiffened. Someone was near the door, or someone had just left. She stepped back slowly. Her porch felt safer. Her window even more so. This was no accident, no mischief, no foolish prank. Someone planned that toll. Someone wanted attention, and they would have it now. Miss Marple closed her door, locked it, listened. A soft step pressed against the lane. Light, careful, close, then silence. She turned to the window again. Fog pressed harder. A shadow drifted within it. Slow, patient, waiting. She whispered, "Who's out there?" Silence answered. Heavy, certain. Someone was. Miss Marple set out toward Rowanford Manor with steady steps. Her shawl lay firm around her shoulders. Her thoughts stayed sharp. A bell that should not ring had rung. That meant action. That meant answers. And Rowanford Manor held the first one. The lane curved gently. Fog rested low. Miss Marple kept her eyes ahead. The manor gate stood open, which was unusual. Lord Percival Rowanford disliked unplanned visitors, disliked surprises, disliked questions even more. Miss Marple entered quietly. The gravel crunched under her shoes. The large oak door opened before she reached it. Mr. Gorse, the butler, stepped out, tall, rigid, expression strained, his hands clasped too tightly. "Miss Marple," he said, voice thin, "you're out early." "So is the bell," she replied. "I heard it." His face tightened. He swallowed hard. "It must have been the wind, madam." Miss Marple shook her head once. "Wind does many things, but not that." Mr. Gorse glanced behind him, a nervous flick, as if checking who might be listening. His tone dropped. "Master won't like disturbances this early." "That cannot be helped," Miss Marple said. A bell rang, and a bell does not ring without reason. Mr. Gorse's eyes darted to the distant tower. Just for a second. A flicker of fear. Then he straightened again, as if buttoning fear away. "Please come in," he murmured. Though he didn't sound pleased about it, Miss Marple stepped through the doorway. The air felt tight, rooms too silent, curtains too still, a house waiting for its secret to be uncovered. Mr. Gorse walked ahead, stiff as a wooden beam. He did not look back. He did not slow. He carried the tension of a man holding something fragile behind his ribs. "Is Lord Rowanford awake?" Miss Marple asked. "He is in his study." A pause. "Has been since before dawn." "Before dawn?" "Yes." Another swallow. "He said he couldn't sleep. He heard something." Miss Marple's steps slowed. "What did he hear?" Mr. Gorse hesitated. His voice thinned again. A sound he did not wish to hear again. "And yet," Miss Marple said. "It came." Mr. Gorse stopped walking. He turned toward her, his face pale. "There are things best left alone, madam." Miss Marple looked at him gently. "Things rarely stay that way, Mr." Gorse opened the drawing-room door. Miss Marple stepped inside. The room was tidy, too tidy, the kind of tidy that hides worry under polished surfaces. A curtain moved slightly, just slightly. Not from wind, not from draught, from someone stepping away. Miss Marple noticed, pretended not to. Her eyes softened, her mind sharpened. "The manor is awake early," she whispered. "Mr." Gorse did not answer. He avoided her gaze. He closed the door too quickly. Miss Marple stood alone in the room. Silence pressed close, heavy, purposeful. The manor watched her. Like it remembered something it wanted buried, and Miss Marple knew someone was already watching her. Miss Marple stood in the drawing-room with her hands folded neatly. The air felt tight. Too many eyes. Too many. Secrets. And everyone pretending nothing was wrong. Lord Percival Rowanford entered first. Tall, rigid, formal to the point of discomfort. He moved like a man holding a lifetime of grudges under his coat. His jaw clenched at the sight of Miss Marple. Annoyance flickered. Then guilt. Then a practiced smile. "Miss Marple," he said, "early morning visits are unusual." "So are early morning bells," she replied. His smile tightened. He looked away. Next came Clara Rowanford. Graceful. Soft features. Eyes red from crying, though she'd tried to hide it with powder. Her hands kept twisting a handkerchief. She nodded politely to Miss Marple, but her gaze darted to her father, then quickly to the floor. Fear lived in that glance. Fear or shame. Mr. Julian Hale entered then, a historian by profession, a worrier by nature. Charming, yes, but too jittery for this quiet morning. He held a small notebook pressed to his chest, his grip white-knuckled. Miss Marple noticed his wrists shaking. Not cold. Nerves. He offered a smile that never reached his eyes. "Terrible business about that bell," he murmured. "They say such things never happen without reason." Miss Marple nodded once. "Indeed." Mrs. Gorse, the housekeeper, slipped in behind him. Her steps were light. Too light. As if she hoped no one would see her at all. Her hands trembled. She clutched her apron as if it were a lifeline. She avoided Miss Marple's eyes. avoided everyone's eyes. She swallowed hard, once, then again. When Lord Percival glanced at her, she flinched. Not fear of the man, fear of something else. Something older, something heavy. Doctor. Fenwick arrived last. Calm, measured. The kind of man who spoke little and observed much. He nodded politely to Miss Marple. His eyes moved around the room, noting every face, every movement, every weakness. He stood with his hands behind his back, watching all of them, too closely, as if he knew more than he wished he knew. Miss Marple took them in quietly. One by one, 5 people, 5 stories written on their faces, 5 secrets pressed behind polite expressions. Lord Percival, annoyed, guilty. Clara, crying, frightened. Julian Hale, nervous, clutching something he didn't want anyone to see. Mrs. Gorse, shaking, terrified of speaking. Dr. Fenwick, alert, too alert, almost expectant. Miss Marple felt the weight of the room, every face friendly, every smile false, every person hiding something. She offered a gentle nod. "I suppose," she said softly. We all heard the bell. No one answered. No one moved. The silence pressed closer, heavy, loaded. Somewhere in this room lay the reason for that impossible toll. And Miss Marple knew. Someone wanted her here, and someone feared she had already seen too much. Breakfast at Rowanford Manor felt nothing like breakfast. Too quiet, too stiff, too many eyes glancing where they shouldn't. Miss Marple sat near the end of the long table, a polite place, a safe place, a place where she could watch everyone without being watched too closely herself. Plates clinked softly, cups rattled, silverware scraped in uneasy rhythm. No one spoke first. Everyone waited. Lord Percival broke the silence. Of course he did. He cleared his throat loudly, a signal that he intended to control the room, as always. "Let's not dwell on nonsense," he said, his tone heavy, final. "The bell is old. Old things misbehave." Julian Hale nearly choked on his tea. His hands trembled. His saucer shook. He reached to steady it and failed. Miss Marple pretended not to notice, but she noticed everything. Clara Rowanford looked pale. She poked at her eggs without interest. Her eyes drifted to her father, then away, then back again. "You hardly slept," she murmured. A simple remark, but her tone slipped, too sharp, too revealing. Lord Percival's face hardened. "I slept as well as any man with responsibilities," he snapped. A warning, a command. Clara flinched. She looked down. Her hand tightened around her fork. Miss Marple watched them both. The old wound between them pulsed across the table. Not new, not recent, long-standing, and dangerous. Mr. Gorse poured more tea. Slow, careful, precise. He avoided Lord Percival's eyes. He avoided everyone's eyes. Lord Percival reached for his cup, the private one, dark ceramic, different from the rest, set in front of him every morning, brewed separately, spiced differently, made only for him. A habit Miss Marple filed away quietly. Private things had reasons, private cups even more so. He took a long sip, a deep breath, then another sip, almost hurried, almost hungry for it. Miss Marple caught the scent as the steam drifted toward her. She paused. The aroma felt wrong, too sweet, too sharp. Not morning tea, not safe tea. Clara noticed too. Her eyes narrowed. She leaned back. She didn't say a word. Julian Hale tried to speak. His voice broke. "I think, perhaps, the bell." Lord Percival cut him off. "The bell is not to be discussed at my table." Silence returned. Thicker, sharper, almost cutting. Mrs. Gorse appeared with toast. She moved quietly, too quietly. Her eyes lingered on the private cup, just for a second, just long enough for Miss Marple to see it. The tension in the room tightened with every breath. Miss Marple stirred her own tea. Bland, ordinary, Safe. Then came the smell again. Stronger. From Lord Percival's cup. She leaned slightly forward. She inhaled once. Small. Careful. Yes. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. Lord Percival lifted the cup once more. He drank deeply. Too deeply. As if he craved it. Miss Marple's eyes narrowed. No one else touched that cup. No one else drank that blend. No one else had reason to go near it. Someone at this table wanted that cup. And Miss Marple knew it wasn't Lord Percival. Breakfast plates had barely been cleared when Lord Percival demanded the next ritual. "The bell ledger," he said. His tone left no room for refusal. "It will be opened. I want this nonsense settled." Clara stiffened. Julian Hale looked away. Dr. Fenwick folded his hands behind his back. Mrs. Gorse froze mid-step. Miss Marple noticed each reaction. None were casual. Mrs. Gorse bowed her head. "Yes, sir." Her voice cracked as she spoke. She disappeared down the hallway. Her footsteps sounded uneven, almost dragging. Miss Marple folded her napkin neatly. She watched the doorway. She watched the faces around her. She watched the tension rise like steam. A ledger was a harmless thing. Ink, paper, dates, nothing more. But the faces here said otherwise. This ledger held weight, heavy weight, perhaps guilt itself. Mrs. Gorse returned. She carried the ledger with both hands, as if it might fall apart, or explode. She placed it on the table, gently, too gently. The room froze. Even the fog outside seemed to pause. Lord Percival stared at the ledger. His jaw tightened. "No one touches it but me." Miss Marple nodded politely. She had no intention of touching it. Watching it was enough. Lord Percival opened the heavy cover. The spine creaked. Pages settled. Dust lifted. Miss Marple leaned slightly forward. Not enough to intrude, enough to see. The ledger listed every toll in the tower's long history. Year by year, line by line. A tidy record. A proud record. A silent record. Until today. Halfway down the page, something broke the pattern. Miss Marple saw it instantly. A torn edge. Fresh ink. Writing that did not belong. And a space where writing should have been. She folded her hands. Calm. Controlled. Her voice soft. "Is that page damaged?" Lord Percival stiffened. He did not answer. He turned the ledger slightly away. A shield. A barrier. Clara leaned in. Too. Her breath caught. That wasn't torn yesterday. Julian Hale swallowed hard. His hand clutched the back of his chair. Too tightly. "Pages don't rip themselves," he whispered. "Misses." Gorse looked ill. She stared at the floor, her hands twisted in her apron. She shook her head once. Small. Weak. Dr. Fenwick cleared his throat. "The ink looks fresh." Lord Percival snapped the ledger shut. Too fast. Too loud. Almost frantic. "No one touches this," he repeated. Miss Marple's voice remained gentle. "But someone has touched it." Lord Percival glared. He stood. He pressed the ledger against his chest, as if guarding it, as if protecting a wound. He turned toward the door. "I will examine it alone." Miss Marple watched him leave, watched the fear ripple across the room, watched Clara's face pale, watched Julian tremble, watched Mrs. Gorse blink back tears. Something had happened in that tower before dawn. Something recorded. Something someone wanted erased. And someone had written in the ledger, while Lord Percival was still awake. Miss Marple stood very still as Lord Percival clutched the ledger to his chest. His grip looked desperate, possessive, wrong. She stepped forward gently. "May I?" she asked, her voice soft, steady, careful. Lord Percival hesitated. A long pause. Too long. Then he handed the ledger to her, reluctantly, as if he feared what she might discover. Miss Marple accepted it with calm hands. She placed it on the table. The spine creaked again. The room tightened. Everyone watched. She opened the front cover slowly, page by page, entry by entry. Dates lined in neat rows. Years of silence recorded with pride. Bells that rang only in history, never recently. She reached the torn page. Fresh ink glared up at her, a line scratched out, a space empty where an entry once lived. Something removed, something added, both wrong. Miss Marple ran her finger along. The tear. Paper gave way beneath her touch. Her fingertips slid inside the loose fold. It snagged on something hard. Not paper. Something metal. She frowned softly. Her finger pressed again. A faint metallic click sounded, the kind of sound no book should ever contain. Clara gasped. Julian stepped back. Mrs. Gorse covered her mouth with both hands. Dr. Fenwick leaned forward. Lord Percival froze. Miss Marple gently widened the torn edge. She slipped her fingers inside. Slow, precise, without fear. They touched metal again. Cold, rigid, old. She drew it out. A small, rusted, winding key lay in her palm, its edges worn, its grooves dust-filled, and along the top edge, dried red-brown stains, old, dark, unmistakable. Clara's breath broke. Julian staggered against the chair. Mrs. Gorse turned as pale as milk. Dr. Fenwick's jaw set. Lord Percival looked as if someone had struck him. Miss Marple held the key up. Her voice remained calm. "This is the bell. Key." Silence dropped over the room. Heavy. Suffocating. Julian shook his head. That key was locked away. Clara whispered, "No one has seen it since I was a child." Mrs. Gorse whispered, No, it can't be." Dr. Fenwick said nothing. His eyes stayed fixed on the stains. Lord Percival finally spoke. His voice cracked. "That key was sealed in the tower chest, under lock, under oath." Miss Marple nodded once. "Yet here it is." She looked at the torn page. She looked at the fresh ink. She looked at the stains. Then at the faces surrounding her. Someone had taken the key. Someone had hidden it. Someone had slid it into the ledger. Someone had torn the page. Someone had written something this morning. And someone had rung the bell. Miss Marple closed the ledger with a quiet snap. The sound cut the room in half. "The key has returned," she murmured. "But not by chance." Lord Percival swallowed hard. "Who would dare?" Miss Marple interrupted him gently. "Who had reason, Lord Rowanford?" He said nothing. No one did. The house felt smaller now, tighter, as if walls leaned closer to listen. Miss Marple placed the rusted key on the table. It lay there like a threat, like a confession, like a warning. Someone had opened the tower, and someone planned for her to find out. The room remained heavy with the sight of the rusted key. No one spoke. No one dared breathe too loudly. Lord Percival stared at the key as if it were a ghost he never expected to see again. He reached for his private teacup, the dark ceramic one, the one no one else touched, the one brewed separately. His hand shook, though he tried to hide it. Miss Marple saw the tremor. Everyone did. He lifted the cup. He drank. One long swallow, too long, too eager. Miss Marple caught the scent again. Too sweet, too sharp, too wrong. Lord Percival set the cup down. Hard, too hard. Tea splashed onto the Bryce tablecloth. He blinked. Once, twice. His pupils tightened. His face drained of color. Fast, too fast. "Percival," Clara whispered. Her voice shook. He opened his mouth. A gasp escaped. Short, broken. Then another gasp. Deeper, desperate. His hand clawed at the edge of the table. He tried to speak. No sound came. Julian Hale stumbled backward. Mrs. Gorse froze in horror. Dr. Fenwick moved at once. Miss Marple stayed very still. The cup slipped from Lord Percival's fingers. It fell, shattered on the floor. A sharp crack. Tea spread across the carpet. Dark, unnatural. Lord Percival collapsed onto the table. His chair scraped violently against the floor. His breath rattled, then stopped. Clara screamed. A sharp sound. Raw. Fractured. Dr. Fenwick reached him first. He pressed fingers to the neck, pressed again, then shook his head, slowly, firmly. "He's gone. Doctor." Fenwick said, his tone flat, clinical, final. Mrs. Gorse sank onto a chair. Her hands trembled uncontrollably. Julian covered his mouth, his eyes wide with terror. Clara stared at the body, frozen, unmoving, as if she couldn't make sense of what she saw. Miss Marple stepped toward the fallen cup. Its shards gleamed under the light. The remaining liquid pooled around them, thick, sweet-scented. Not ordinary tea, not safe tea. She glanced at the other cups, all untouched, all separate. She looked at Clara's cup, then at Mrs. Gorse's hands, then at the placement of the saucers. Small details, obvious to her now. Lord Percival had grabbed the wrong cup, or perhaps the right one, depending on intention. Clara whispered, He wasn't supposed to drink so fast. Julian stepped back sharply. Clara, she shook her head violently. No, I didn't mean I didn't. Dr. Fenwick cut in. Everyone calm yourselves. But his voice wavered too. Miss Marple approached the broken cup. She crouched, examined the spill. The scent told her enough. Bitter almond, masked under spice, deadly if swallowed. She stood slowly. Her eyes swept the room, every face twisted with shock, fear, guilt. Something darker. Someone here had prepared that poison. Someone had chosen that cup. Someone had planned the moment. But the wrong person drank it. Miss Marple folded her hands calmly. Her voice quiet, measured. I'm afraid, she said, this was not meant for Lord Percival. All eyes snapped toward her. Terror widened them. She looked at Clara's untouched cup, then at Mrs. Gorse's shaking hands. The poisoned tea wasn't his, and Miss Marple knew whose cup it truly was. The room froze around Lord Percival's fallen body. Silence tightened like a rope. No one breathed normally. No one stood naturally. Everyone revealed something. More than they wished, more than they realized. Miss Marple kept her place, calm, observing, collecting every reaction like clues laid on a tray. Clara moved first, but not toward her father, not in grief, not in shock. She stepped back. One slow step, then another. Her shoulders loosened. Relief flickered across her face. Tiny, quick, but unmistakable. Miss Marple saw it. A burden lifted. Not placed, not shared. Lifted. Julian Hale reacted next. He stumbled backward until he hit the wall. Hard. He pressed both hands against it, as if holding himself together. His eyes darted wildly, not toward the body, but toward the doorway. Escape. His thoughts screamed it. His breath came fast. Fear. True fear. Not guilt. Just terror of what came next. Mr. Gorse tried to slip away. Quietly, slowly, hoping no one noticed. He moved toward the hall, toward the servants' passage. But Miss Marple noticed. Everyone did. Lord Percival's death had freed him in some way, or implicated him. He wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. He clutched his hands together as if afraid they might reveal something. Mrs. Gorse began sobbing, too loudly, too quickly. Tears fell before she even looked at the body. She trembled violently. Her apron shook with her. Her voice rose in broken gasps. Not natural grief. Not shock. Something else. Something practiced. Something forced. As if she needed everyone to see her response. As if she feared what they might think if she didn't. Doctor. Fenwick remained still. Very still. Too still. His face unreadable. Arms folded behind his back again. Professional. Detached. Cold. He examined the room rather than the body. Every person, every detail, every possibility. Miss Marple watched his eyes move. Measured. Calculated. Not shocked. Not shaken. Prepared. Miss Marple stayed quiet. Her hands folded neatly in front of her. She watched them all. Every breath. Every flinch. Every hesitation. Lord Percival lay across the table. Still. Forever still. Clara exhaled softly. A sound too gentle for the moment. Too light. Too freeing. Julian covered his face. Not to cry. To hide. Mr. Gorse froze halfway to the door. Fear caught him, pinned him. Mrs. Gorse sobbed harder, almost theatrically now. A shield of tears. A shield built too fast. Dr. Fenwick cleared his throat. A quiet sound, controlled. Certain. Miss Marple finally spoke, her voice soft, even. Careful. There is much grief in this room, she said. But not all of it belongs to sorrow. Clara's head jerked up. Julian looked away. Mr. Gorse stiffened. Mrs. Gorse's sobbing faltered. Doctor. Fenwick's eyes narrowed. Miss Marple stepped once toward the table. Just once, enough to hold the room's attention. Someone here is glad he's gone, she said. Very glad. Silence cracked. Faces tightened. Breaths caught. And in that silence, Miss Marple saw it the smallest shift, the tiniest flicker the truth trying to hide. Someone in this room had wanted him gone. And Miss Marple finally saw who. The kitchen of Rowanford Manor was never loud, never chaotic, never disorderly, until now. Miss Marple stepped inside quietly. She preferred quiet steps. They allowed truth to breathe before it hid. Pots rattled. Dishes clattered. Voices whispered in corners. Servants huddled together, wide-eyed. Fear hung thick in the room. Mrs. Gorse stood near the pantry, her apron twisted in her hands, her breathing sharp, her face pale, too pale. Miss Marple walked toward her. Slow, gentle, patient. Mrs. Gorse, she said softly. I need to ask a few questions. Mrs. Gorse jumped. Her hands tightened around the apron. Her gaze dropped to the floor. I didn't mean for this to happen, she whispered. Barely a breath. Barely a confession. Barely anything. But enough. Miss Marple tilted her head. You didn't mean what exactly? Mrs. Gorse shook her head. Tears gathered. I didn't want this. She gestured weakly toward the dining room. Toward the body. Toward the shattered cup. Toward the morning gone wrong. Miss Marple's eyes moved to the pantry. The door stood open. Shelves half emptied. Jars misplaced. But one thing mattered most. The tea tins. All identical. All lined neatly. Except for one gap. One missing tin. Miss Marple stepped closer. What was kept here? Mrs. Gorse hesitated. Just tea, madam. Which one? Mrs. Gorse swallowed hard. The spiced blend. The one the master drinks. Of course. His private blend. The only cup touched that morning. The only cup poisoned. Miss Marple examined the empty space. No dust. No residue. Taken recently. Very recently. She turned back to Mrs. Gorse. Who handled the tins this morning? Mrs. Gorse's tears spilled. I did. And who brewed the master's tea? I did that too, she whispered. Her shoulders shook. I brew it every morning. I always have. Miss Marple nodded once. Routine. Predictable. Trusted. The kind of routine someone could exploit. Or hide behind. A faint rustle sounded. Something slipped from Mrs. Gorse's apron. A small folded slip of paper. It drifted to the floor. Miss Marple bent down. She picked it up, opened it carefully. 4 words stared back at her. The tower owes its debt. Mrs. Gorse gasped. Her hand flew to her mouth. I didn't put that there. I swear, I didn't. Miss Marple studied the handwriting. Sharp strokes. Heavy pressure. Anger pressed into each letter. Who would write this? She asked quietly. Mrs. Gorse shook her head violently. I don't know. I don't know anything. Please believe me. Servants watched from the corners. Silent, afraid. Some looked at Mrs. Gorse with pity. Some with suspicion. Some with relief. The tea tin was gone. The ledger page torn. The bell key returned. The bell rung. And now a note. A threat. A promise. Miss Marple folded the paper. Her voice calm. Low. Final. Debts are paid by someone. And debts are collected by someone. She looked at the pantry again. At the empty space. At the trembling housekeeper. At the shadows in the corners. Then she whispered the truth forming in her mind. And someone in this house intends to collect. The manor drifted into a hushed panic. Servants moved in tight, nervous lines. Doors clicked quietly. Voices dropped to whispers. Secrets began to shake loose. Miss Marple walked the corridor with calm steps. She did not hurry. She never hurried. Rushed minds missed details. Slow minds caught them. A faint murmur reached her. Soft, panicked, hidden. It came from the conservatory. A long room of glass and plants. A place where people forget sound carries. She slipped inside, quiet as dust. Quiet as an old habit. The voices grew clearer. 2 servants, young, uneasy, standing behind tall potted palms. Miss Marple stayed near the curtains. Not too close. Just close enough. The first servant whispered, "I told you he threatened Julian Hale." I heard every word. The second gasped. He wouldn't dare threaten a guest. Oh, he dared. He said Julian knew too much. He said the historian had seen something. Something in the tower. Miss Marple's fingers tightened slightly around her shawl. The second servant asked, "What did Julian see?" A pause. Breath held. Fear rising. He said, "Julian knew what really happened in the tower. That night. Years ago." Miss Marple stopped breathing for a moment. Years ago. Not this morning. A past wound. A hidden event. The first servant continued. Lord Percival told Julian to keep his mouth shut. He said the past was buried, and it would stay buried. And Julian, the second whispered. He didn't stay quiet. A tremble in the voice. He said, "Let the truth ring." Just like that. The second servant stepped back. Then the bell. "This morning." "Yes," the first hissed. "It was a message. It had to be. Julian sent it. Who else knows enough to even touch the mechanism?" Miss Marple raised an eyebrow. Julian Hale, historian. Nervous, clutching his notebook like a shield. Terrified during breakfast. But not guilty, or guilty of something older. The second servant whispered again. If Julian rang the bell, did he also poison? "Don't say it," the first warned. "You don't know who's listening." Miss Marple smiled faintly. The boy was wiser than he realized. The second servant lowered her voice further. If Lord Percival was blackmailing him, Julian would break. "He already has," the first replied. "You saw his face." Miss Marple had seen it too. Wide eyes, trembling hands. Fear deep enough to shatter a man. They continued. The master pushed him too far. Threatened him. Cornered him. Maybe Julian snapped. Maybe he decided it was time for justice. Justice. Such a heavy word in such young mouths. Miss Marple took one quiet step back, then another. She let the curtain fall into place. The voices blurred again, faded, soft, uncertain. She walked out of the conservatory quietly, thoughtfully. Each whisper stitched a new piece into the morning's puzzle. Lord Percival had threatened Julian. Julian had threatened back. And the bell had spoken before dawn. Someone was blackmailed. Someone fought back. And Miss Marple knew. The truth had rung long before the bell did. Miss Marple preferred facts laid out neatly. But Roanford Manor offered nothing neat. Only knots. Tangled. Hidden. Pulled tight for years. She sat in the small sitting room with Clara. The young woman's hands trembled around her teacup. Her face drained, her eyes hollow. "Clara," Miss Marple said softly, "you know something, and it weighs on you." Clara swallowed. Once, twice, then the truth slipped out. "I was engaged," she whispered, "to Thomas Gorse, Mrs. Gorse's son." Miss Marple blinked. A quiet surprise, a sharp one. Connections formed instantly. Painful connections. "No one knew," Clara continued. "Father forbade it. Said the match was beneath us. Said I was foolish." Tears gathered at the corners of her eyes. "And Thomas?" Miss Marple asked gently. Clara shook her head. "He tried to prove himself worthy. He worked at the tower. He repaired the ledge. He wanted to show Father he could be trusted." Miss Marple leaned forward. "What happened?" Clara's breath stuttered. "He fell." A single word. Soft. Broken. He fell from the tower ledge, right in front of Father. Miss Marple's heart tightened. "And the truth?" she asked quietly. "Father said it was an accident," Clara whispered. "Dr. Fenwick signed the report. Said Thomas slipped." Miss Marple nodded slowly. "And you believed otherwise?" Clara's voice shook. "I saw the ledge the next day. It wasn't broken. It wasn't weak. Thomas didn't fall. He was pushed, or frightened, or cornered." Miss Marple allowed silence to settle. Silence gave grief space, and truth room to breathe. Clara wiped her eyes. "Father made everyone swear to keep quiet. Said the village must not know. Said Thomas had lost his footing." Miss Marple touched her arm gently. "And Mrs. Gorse?" "She knew," Clara whispered. "She begged Father to tell the truth. He threatened to dismiss her. Said she would lose her cottage." A new piece clicked into place. Mrs. Gorse, fearful, shaking, sobbing too fast, carrying secrets deeper than her apron pockets. Clara continued. "Money disappeared after Thomas died. Large amounts. Father said it was for repairs. But there were no repairs." Miss Marple's eyes narrowed. "Someone was paid," she murmured. "Or someone was silenced." Clara nodded. "It was all buried. Father made sure of it. He said some truths ruin families, but I think some lies ruin them more." Miss Marple stood slowly. Her mind moved through every detail. Thomas Gorse, Clara's hidden grief, Mrs. Gorse's trembling hands, Dr. Fenwick's calm lies, Lord Percival's guilt, and the tower, the silent witness. She looked out toward the fog, toward the shadowed shape of the tower, toward the place where so much had gone wrong. "Clara," Miss Marple said gently, "your father held too many people in his debt." Clara nodded, her voice small. "Everyone owed him something." Miss Marple whispered the rest. "Or hated him for something." She looked back toward the manor hall, dark, still, holding breath. And someone in this house was ready to settle their score. Miss Marple stepped outside the manor slowly. The air felt colder, still, heavy with things unsaid. She tightened her shawl. The bell tower stood beyond the trees, tall, silent, older than the manor itself. She knew she needed to see it. Not later, not with a crowd. Now, alone, before anyone swept away the truth. The path curved toward the tower. Damp earth, soft ground. Perfect for footprints, perfect for secrets. Miss Marple paused at the first patch of mud. Her eyes lowered. A clear print. Deep, heavy, large. A man's boot. A very large boot. She crouched slowly. Her fingers traced the outline. Wide heel, long toe, pressed hard into the soil. Lord Percival's size. No doubt. She had seen his boots by the back door, cleaned nightly. Huge, polished, impossible to mistake. Miss Marple followed the print. One step, then another. The spacing steady, confident, not sneaking, not hiding. Lord Percival had come here with purpose. But then she stopped. Another print overlapped lightly with his. Smaller, narrower, very different. A woman's shoe, indoor sole, soft bottom. Not meant for outside, not meant for mud, not meant for dawn. Miss Marple straightened. Her eyes swept the ground. More prints appeared. 2 sets, side by side, walking the same direction, toward the tower door. She followed them carefully. The boot print stayed heavy, firm, determined. The indoor shoes stayed light, hesitant, uneven, as if the wearer stopped often, turned back, considered running. Someone came unwillingly. Someone followed reluctantly. Someone was pulled into this. Miss Marple reached the base of the tower, the stone cold, the door locked. The same thick iron lock that held the key for decades. She looked down again. The prints grew messy near the entrance. Lord Percival's boots faced the door directly, the smaller prints angled sideways, as if the person hesitated, as if they stood back, as if they feared what was inside. Miss Marple touched the old wood gently. Still cold. No freshness in the hinges. The door hadn't been opened recently. Not from here. Not by force. Yet the bell tolled. Someone reached the mechanism inside. Someone found a way. She took a step back. Her eyes scanned the ground again. Mud disturbed. Grass bent. A broken twig. A scrape against stone. 2 people had come here before dawn. 2 people walked to this very door. 2 people stood in front of the locked tower, and only 1 returned alive. Miss Marple let the thoughts settle. Quiet, heavy, clear. Lord Percival had approached the tower. Someone else followed. Someone with indoor shoes. Someone who should not have been outside. Someone hiding something deep. Someone the morning sun did not expect to witness. She knelt once more. Her fingers brushed the delicate heel mark. Recognizable now. Painfully recognizable. Clara? Mrs. Gorse? Another woman? Or someone pretending to be one? Miss Marple stood, her voice barely a whisper. Someone came with him. The tower loomed behind her. Silent. Listening. Waiting. 2 sets of prints at the door. 2 fates linked. 2 stories. Converging. And one of those prints belonged to someone who never should have been near that tower at all. Miss Marple found Julian Hale in the library. He sat on the floor beside a toppled chair. His notebook lay open. Pages crumpled. His hands shook violently. He did not see her at first. He stared at the empty hearth. Lost. Drained. Broken. She closed the door quietly. "Mr. Hale," she said softly. "May I sit with you?" Julian flinched. His breath hitched. He wiped his face quickly. Too quickly. As if hiding tears mattered now. "Yes," he whispered. His voice cracked. Shattered. Miss Marple lowered herself into a chair. Calm. Patient. She folded her hands neatly. "I think," she began, "you have something to tell me." Julian's shoulders sagged. He nodded. Slowly. Defeated. "Yes," he said. "I can't keep it in anymore." Miss Marple waited. Silence always gave guilt room to surface. Julian swallowed hard. "I took the bell key. Yesterday." Miss Marple did not react. She watched him gently. Encouraging. Not accusing. Julian buried his face in his hands. "I took it from the tower chest. I shouldn't have. But I had to." His voice trembled. "I was researching the last toll recorded. The entry about Clara's fiancé, Thomas Gorse." Miss Marple leaned forward slightly. "You believed Lord Percival lied?" Julian nodded. "More than believed, I knew." He pulled his notebook toward him and opened a page. In shaky handwriting, he had copied an old tower log. Different ink, different hand. "The ledger was altered years ago," Julian whispered. "Pages replaced, lines forged, dates shifted." He looked up, eyes red. "Lord Percival rewrote the night Thomas died. He erased the truth. He buried what happened on that ledge." Miss Marple let him breathe, let him steady. Julian whispered again. "I wanted to confront him, force him to admit it, force him to tell Clara." His hands shook harder. "So I took the bell key. I needed proof. I was going to ring the bell at dawn, make him come to the tower, make him face the truth." Miss Marple's eyes narrowed gently. "You planned to ring it yourself?" Julian nodded. "Yes, but I never did." He looked terrified now. "I lost my nerve. I never even left the house. I kept the key in my coat pocket all night." Miss Marple studied him carefully. "What happened to it today?" Julian looked confused. "I don't know. I woke up, and it was gone." Miss Marple's breath softened. Someone had taken it. Someone close. Someone watching him. Julian's voice broke. "But I didn't poison him, I swear it. I only wanted the truth. I never meant for anyone to die." He pressed both palms flat against the carpet. Exhausted. Empty. Miss Marple stood slowly. Her expression thoughtful. Sharp. Certain. "Mr. Hale," she said quietly, "if you took the key yesterday." She looked toward the hallway, toward the drawing room, toward the ledger waiting on the table. "Who put it inside the ledger this morning?" The answer was not Julian, and she knew it. Someone else had used that key. Someone else had touched that ledger. Someone else had rung the bell, and that someone was still inside the manor. Miss Marple returned to the drawing room. The ledger waited on the table. Silent, accusing, heavy with answers. She laid her notes out. Pieces, fragments, each one small, but together, far louder than any bell. Clara stood near the window, tense, fingers twisting her necklace, eyes swollen. Mrs. Gorse hovered behind a chair, hands clasped, head bowed, breathing quick. Dr. Fenwick watched from the corner, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Julian sat stiffly, still pale, still trembling. Miss Marple spoke softly, not accusing, not harsh, simply assembling truth. "Let us begin," she said, "because the pieces now fit." Everyone looked at her, fear tightening the air. Miss Marple touched the breakfast table setting. "The place cards were moved this morning," she said. "Someone changed the seats." Clara flinched. Her hand slipped from her necklace. "You meant no harm," Miss Marple continued. "You only wished to sit farther from your father. You moved your card quietly. No one noticed." Clara swallowed hard. She nodded. Once, Miss Marple turned to Mrs. Gorse. "You prepared the teacups," she said. "You placed them on the table, each in its own spot." Mrs. Gorse trembled. I always do, madam." "Yes," Miss Marple said gently. "And someone counted on that." She slid the ledger closer, opened to the torn page. Fresh ink, a missing entry, a lie rewritten. "The handwriting," Miss Marple said quietly, "matches Clara's." Clara stepped back. "No, I didn't. I never—" Miss Marple raised a hand softly. "You copied an old family verse last night. The same curve, the same slant, the same pressure. The torn page was forged to look like your hand." Clara stared in horror. "Someone framed me?" Miss Marple nodded. "Precisely." She turned to Dr. Fenwick. "And you, Doctor, visited the tower last night?" His eyes narrowed. "I walked past it. Nothing more." Miss Marple shook her head. "A gardener saw your lantern. You were inside, checking something, or removing something." Dr. Fenwick's jaw tightened. He said nothing. Miss Marple lifted the missing tea note from her pocket. "The tea tin," she said, "smelled of bitter almond. Only one thing carries that scent. Poison." Mrs. Gorse began to cry again. Julian looked sick. Clara stared at the floor. Miss Marple's voice stayed calm, steady, warm, even as the truth sharpened. "The poisoned cup," she said, "was placed at Clara's seat." Clara gasped. Her knees weakened. Mrs. Gorse caught her arm. Miss Marple continued. "Lord Percival drank from it only because Clara moved the cards. She swapped her place. He sat where she would have." Julian whispered. "That means Clara was the target." "Yes," Miss Marple said softly. "The poison was meant for her, not him." The room froze. Fear spread like cold water. Clara's voice cracked. "Why? Who would want to kill me?" Miss Marple looked at each face, slowly, carefully. Then her gaze settled, long, unblinking, certain, because she finally knew. "The poison was meant for Clara," she said, and Miss Marple finally knew why. The room held its breath. Clara stood trembling, Julian frozen in shock. Dr. Fenwick unreadable in the corner, Mrs. Gorse gripping the back of a chair as if it were the only thing keeping her upright. Miss Marple stepped forward, slow, sure, certain. She looked first at Clara, gentle eyes, soft voice. "You were never meant to drink with your father," she said. "You were meant to drink before him." Clara blinked, confused, afraid. "Before him? But my tea was brought to my room." "Yes," Miss Marple replied. "And only one person has ever brought it." Her gaze shifted. Firm now, cold now. Mrs. Gorse's fingers tightened, her knuckles turned white. Miss Marple spoke quietly. "It was you, Mrs. Gorse." A thin cry escaped the housekeeper's lips. Not denial, not shock, something deeper. Something cracked. Julian whispered. Mrs. Gorse. Miss Marple continued. You had access to Clara's morning tray. You prepared her tea every dawn. No one checked your tin. No one questioned your routine. And you counted on that. Mrs. Gorse shook her head weakly. I never wanted. Miss Marple raised one hand. Your motive was not greed, nor anger at the family name. It was grief. Mrs. Gorse flinched, hard. Miss Marple went on. Your son, Thomas Gorse, Clara's fiancé. She paused. Respectful. Steady. He died in that tower. Clara gasped. Tears filled her eyes. No, Mrs. Gorse. I loved him. Mrs. Gorse cried. You loved him enough to hide. Miss Marple remained calm as rain. Thomas did not slip. He did not fall. He was driven to that ledge by fear, and Lord Percival covered it up. Dr. Fenwick signed it away. You watched them bury the truth. Mrs. Gorse's sobs grew violent. My boy, my poor boy. Miss Marple lowered her voice. And you blamed Clara. You believed she abandoned him. You believed she let him climb that tower alone. Clara shook her head, sobbing. He asked me to stay inside. He said he wanted to prove himself to father. Mrs. Gorse stared at her, torn, hurting, breaking. Miss Marple continued. You didn't kill Lord Percival. You killed no man today. Your poison was meant for Clara. Mrs. Gorse collapsed into a chair, her apron soaked with tears. I only wanted her to feel what I felt, to lose what I lost. Miss Marple nodded slowly. You placed the poisoned cup at her seat, but Clara moved the cards, and Lord Percival took her place. He drank what was meant for her. Mrs. Gorse stared at her hands. They took my son, and God took the wrong one back. Miss Marple stood still. She did not moralize. She did not soften the truth. She let the weight of the moment settle. Heavy. Inevitable. Julian whispered. So Clara was never the enemy. Miss Marple answered softly. No. Clara was the intended victim. Mrs. Gorse lifted her face. Grief twisted into something darker, something unfinished. Miss Marple saw it. Revenge misfired. And what Mrs. Gorse planned is not yet finished. Mrs. Gorse was led away slowly. No struggle. Just a hollow grief that emptied every step she took. Clara sank into a chair. Her hands covered her face. Tears slipped through her fingers. Not only for her father, but for Thomas. For the love she never had the chance to defend. Julian stood beside her, eyes lowered, voice weak. I should have spoken years ago. I knew the records were false. I let fear keep me quiet. Clara nodded softly. She did not blame him. Silence had trapped them all. Miss Marple remained with them, calm, still, a quiet presence holding the room together. No truth stays buried, she said gently. Not forever. The manor fell silent, grief settling like dust. Then from the old tower, a single soft toll drifted across the grounds. The bell rang again, this time by the wind. The bell tower stood silent again, tall, still, its single window staring over the village like an old watcher returned to sleep. Inside the manor's empty drawing room, the ledger lay open on the table. Its torn page lifted slightly with every faint draught. Beside it rested the tower key, rust flaking, edges worn. A small, quiet weight, carrying decades of secrets. Only one candle burned nearby. Its flame trembled, soft, uncertain, throwing thin shadows across the inked lines of the ledger. Fog crept in through the cracks of the old windows, filling the floor, slow, crawling, like truth returning to places it once lived. Beyond the glass, the lane outside disappeared into grey. No footsteps, no sound, just the stillness left after confessions. And in that quiet, in the soft flicker and the slow fog, one truth lingered longer than any echo. Davis returns with a gentle tone. Which clue spoke to you first? He asks softly. And where are you listening from tonight? He offers a warm thank you, a quiet nod to everyone who shared this mystery. Your thoughts, he adds, are always welcome in the comments. Then a soft tease drifts in. Tomorrow's mystery begins with a locked lighthouse and one missing lantern. The pause settles warmly. Calm, inviting. Rest well tonight, Davis whispers. And remember, tomorrow, another kettle will boil.